Again, good morning. My name is Mary Miller, and I am going to share with you a little bit of information about who we are as QuickTag, what we do, how we can help you, but then we're going to dive into the meat and fun of all of the product and what you really came to see today from a training perspective. And I am also, he's not on the call with us today, but I also work very closely with my colleague here at QuickTag, Michael Sortino. He is also one of your QuickTag team contacts as well. So I'd like you to have his name and contact information as well as my own here displayed on this screen. Yeah. So our agenda for today then is going to be that we're going to talk a little bit about document management and process challenges, why you would do anything, right? If you have an ERP system, or if you aren't using document management in your ERP system, looking for something maybe separate outside of that, what are the challenges? Why do you need to do that? What are the benefits to your organization? And then we're going to walk in through a product demonstration. I'm going to show you document management, a little bit about AP automation, and then our new expense management solution as well, and highlight the mobile app with that. We've just introduced the mobile app. It's super cool and easy to use. A lot of people are finding it really, really helpful from an expense management standpoint. And then we'll have some time for questions and discussion. So if you have questions during the course of today's session, please go ahead and enter them into the Zoom window in the chat, okay? So to get started with some of the challenges, right? Why do anything? Well, if you look around your office today, chances are, and I talk to companies just like yours all the time, they tell me, Mary, we have file cabinets up and down the hallways of our business. We have offices that are dedicated to storage boxes instead of people. And when it comes to routing our critical business documents like invoices and expense reports and HR forms and the like, we're doing it on paper, and it goes from this person's desk to this person's desk to this person, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. And even if you have email in that, okay, great. Somebody scanned it in, took a picture, whatever, and emailed it along. That's still a one-to-one communication. It's still very manual. Just because you made it digital, that's great. That's step one. That is only step one. However, nobody else can see that. There's no visibility into that type of process. So the number one challenge for accounts payable specifically and similar paper-based processes is the manual routing of those documents for approval. And then take that to the next step, right? You're manually routing pieces of paper, and then you're manually doing data entry, and that becomes very inefficient. It becomes very error prone, and often things get lost along the way, as you can see here from the data points shared on this slide. So when you think about that from an invoice challenges, that's what's happening in the invoice and accounts payable world. That's why we need to digitize and automate those things. Similarly, from an expense management standpoint, we have expense management on papers. We have receipts. Look at this pile of receipts on the screen. You don't know when you had this meeting, who it was with, what it was for. You hope you remember to bring the receipt back to the office. But then when you do, I don't know about you, I come back to the office, I empty out my backpack, my pockets, my purse, whatever, and I hope that I have gotten all of my invoices and my receipts into the system here. I see that we have a question. Is it okay if we hold questions till the end? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we'll address all the questions at the end. So hold that thought. I noted that you have a question though. So we have paper receipts. The purpose of those receipts and the purpose of those expenses is very difficult to manage when you're dealing with a lot of paper. Okay, and then what do? We take those receipts and then we open a spreadsheet that we have to manually do data entry, type them in, and then go over to the copy machine, right? Copy all of the receipts or staple them together and attach them to that expense report, route that around for approval, usually manually, put it in the interoffice mail, put it on somebody's desk, etc. All of that takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of time for the person submitting the receipts and reports, and certainly it takes a lot of time for those people responsible for the approval, and they have no visibility into that process. So similarly with expenses, it's very difficult to manage on paper. Research shows the same thing. If you look at the chart on your slide, on the slide in front of you, it shows that that same process, manual data entry and routing of reports, is the problem for 60% of organizations. Maybe you can relate. I know that we could do it here. We were having that challenge here before we started. We use our own system as well, of course. And before we did, it was very painful, very manual. In fact, we would have people go over to the copy machine, not just on the receipt side, but on the accounting side. We would have the person responsible for the paying the bill from the credit card statements would go over to the copy machine, cover up the part of the statement that was for just one person, everything but just one person, and then the next and the next. And then they would take that copied piece of paper with just the receipt transactions that were for me to my desk and just the receipt transactions for the next person and say, hey, can you write on here, tell me what this expense before? You know, if you're doing something like that today, chances are you could benefit greatly from an automated system. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is how we can automate and integrate with our Dynamics ERP systems and certainly save a lot of time and money and increase our productivity by automating our AP process, our expense management process, and our document management. So I'm going to just switch screens here and click over to this screen and walk into the demonstration environment. Okay, so what you're looking at now is the beginning of, we're going to start with AP. I'm going to give you a brief overview of an AP automation end-to-end where invoices, in this case, come into a central queue. So in this role, we'll wear our AP manager hat, where we receive invoices. We have to do some initial indexing of those invoices. Then we will route them for approval. They will get approved and they will get created, in this case, inside of GP. And then I will show you a little bit about our expense management and the mobile app solution, how that works to help and then create expense reports. Then I'll show you the credit card reconciliation for expense reports. And then we'll take a look at how all of this comes to life in the document management, especially when it's very, very integrated into our ERP system, okay? So we're going to start with the AP automation world, right? What are we looking at? Well, in this world, this is the QuickTag Microsoft Dynamics Pro client. This one is designed specifically for GP, as I mentioned. So we'll walk through this world as a GP user and as an AP manager who receives invoices in the organization and is responsible for kicking off the workflow, doing the first step of indexing invoices. So we've got 3 different steps here. We have tag, edit, and approve. Now, in our role today for indexing in accounts payable, we're going to look at the tag step. That's step 1. Edit, of course, is something if I have to change a GL code or whatever, and then approval, of course, if I'm responsible for the ultimate approval. So what are we looking at? I clicked into tag, and what this is showing me is now, instead of having a stack of physical papers sitting on my desk, I have a digital list. Look, this, when I click on the left-hand side, look at this one, I click to the next one, I get a little bit more information about when the document was sent in, and I can see the document on the right. So instead of turning over page 1, page 2, page 3, etc., I am now just clicking on the invoice. Now, in the world of QuickTag, these, as you can see right here and where they live, uploaded or emailed invoices. These invoices in my environment were emailed into me. What does that mean? It means that the vendor decided that, and we worked out, we had a conversation, right? I said, hey, Advanced Office Systems in this case, right? I said, can you start emailing me your invoices? It's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to save you the postage. You don't have to wait for something to come in the mail to me, so you can save time and postage on your side. And B, I'm going to know that it needs to be processed sooner. So chances are you're going to get paid faster because I can have visibility into all the invoices my company is responsible for processing and paying, of course. So I'm now looking at this invoice and I say, you know, Advanced Office Systems, maybe they just called me, right? They said, hey, Mary, where's that payment? So let's take a look at what we're going to do there. I come into my work queue, my now digital work queue. If, by the way, they did send it to me in paper and I still get some in the mail, I could scan them in just as easily. So whether I scan them in, email them in, upload them, all of that, they come into the same queue. All right, so this is my stack of invoices, but now it's digital. So let's take a look at this Advanced Office Systems invoice. I right click on it and I get some workflow options. Now, for demo and training purposes today, I'm going to select the option New Invoice Approver Selection Template. Templates are really cool. I'm going to show you why. Templates take the data that have been entered from this invoice on a previous occasion and make them accessible to me, available to me for any time thereafter that I get that invoice. Well, I can see this is the invoice for the portfolio case. Here's my advanced portfolio case template. I select that from my list of templates and I say, okay. You're going to see what that does for us here in a second. The first time I received this invoice, I created and saved that template. But now, let's say I order portfolio cases, every couple months because I have events all the time. I need them for every time I do an event. So I saved it as a template, and now all of the data about that invoice is instantly available for me. Now, of course, you're going to have to change the date because we know that the template from the original date will have changed until today. So we're going to go ahead and select today's date for this one and the document number because we know we need a unique invoice number. But check this out. When I come over and highlight and just do a quick copy paste for this invoice number, this document number, when I try to submit that invoice, I'm going to get a duplicate error because I can't use the same invoice, of course, because GP doesn't allow that. And even if it was in QuickTag, we would notify you of that as well, okay? But this is another great thing. When I created this template, I put in GL codes. So I have the GL code defaults in this case because they're on my vendor card also in GP as vendor defaults. But had I not and needed to select them, I have a real-time lookup here, real-time connection to GP. I could add them, change them, whatever. But when I saved that into the template, now my GL codes are already there for me as well. So friends, all we had to do was pick the template, update the document date and the document number, and now this invoice is ready to go. So I'm going to put Optimus here in the description just so that we can follow that along. Our approver is already identified for us, also saved from the template. It's going to go to Mary, CFO. So now watch this. When I try to click submit, it's going to give me an error. Highlights this document number in red, and it says this document number already exists in GP. So we have to do something to make it unique. I'll just add today's date at the end there. And now we have a unique document number that we can go ahead and submit this invoice. So in just a couple of minutes, seconds it would be, right, if you were just tabbing through and doing it on your own, you have indexed an invoice from a template that already gave you 90% of the information. We updated the invoice number and the date, and we submitted that invoice for approval. And then, of course, I can move on to the next and the next and the next in my list. All right. But as AP manager now, our work is done for that invoice. So we submitted it for approval. We sent it for approval to Mary CFO. So I just clicked over here to my online QuickTag interface and I'm logged in. You can see on the right-hand side here as Mary CFO. Now remember, we have not yet looked at anything specifically in GP, right? But all of this data is very connected to GP. So it's real-time lookup of the data, and it has GL codes that are mapped so that I can see that if I want to, and I'm really leveraging my integration with GP in this case, okay? But now you might have noticed we just got an email notification down there. We'll take a look at that in a second. But now I'm logged in as Mary CFO again, and I've come into my task queue. So I often have to approve invoices and other documents, perhaps. So in my task queue, of course, at the top of this list, I have the invoice that we just sent in for advance. Let's just maximize our screen so we can see all of this data. Now, as a reviewer and approver, I could, in some cases, have the option, I'm going to show the GL codes here, I might have to edit those GL codes. So in this case, we're just going to review and approve. But if I need to edit them, we'll set that up in your workflow as well. I can also see the workflow history. I can see who in accounts payable entered it and what status. Remember that visibility we talked about and how painful it is when you don't have it in manual processes with paper? Well, that takes that out of the equation. So I'm looking at everything here. I see the document number. We've looked at the GL codes. We saw the workflow history. Everything looks good. So we're probably going to approve this invoice, yeah? But let's take a look over here at this email notification that we just got, see what that's about. So I go over to email and I open this email that says QuickTag invoice workflow approval required. So let's pretend I'm on the road, right? And I'm looking at email on my phone, maybe my tablet, perhaps my laptop, of course, but I'm looking at this through some remote notification just in email. Well, what's great about this is that I can look at all of the important data about that invoice, the amount, the codes, who it's for, the vendor, of course. There's my description. We see it's the one we just entered. I can even open the attachment. It's attached to this email. I can open that attachment, review the invoice itself, make sure that it is in fact the invoice we say we're paying here. I can scroll to the bottom, click approve, click reject, and the invoice moves on its way. Now, of course, if I reject, I have to add some comments. I have to tell them, no, we're not paying this vendor right now. The GL codes are wrong. Please route this to somebody else or whatever. But I have that option and I can reject and put comments, or I could simply approve right there. So multiple ways to review and approve documents. Now, if I needed to make some edits, of course, I have to come into the interface because that's where all of the data lives. But in this case, we're just reviewing and approving. If I was rejecting here too, I would also put comments. Or I could delegate it. Maybe this invoice was supposed to come out of somebody else's budget and I just want to send it directly to them. I have that option as well. So we're going to go ahead and approve. We're going to say okay to pay. Comments are optional though. We'll just put them in there for fun. And now that invoice is out of my task queue as CFO. And I'm able to then move on to the next or move on with my day and come back to this stuff later, okay? So our work reviewing and approving that invoice is now done. Now, what happens next with that invoice in the workflow process is if CFO, Mary CFO, is the final approval on that, as we would imagine she is, yeah, as CFO, then that invoice has reached its final level of approval. Why do I say it that way? Well, if that invoice, let's say, was for $10,000 and went to a department manager first, maybe because it's $10,000, it needs CFO approval. So based on most commonly dollar threshold, an invoice could be then automatically routed to a next level of approval. And maybe it could need 2, in some cases maybe 3, depending on really significant capital purchases or whatever. So when the final approval happens, we set that up in the QuickTag workflow, and then QuickTag sends that invoice along with all of that data right here into GP. So QuickTag comes to life on this additional menu inside of GP. And we have the tag and the view and the search. Those are document management functions. We'll talk about those in a second. From a workflow standpoint, though, we come into work queue so that we can see all of the documents that are ready and waiting for us to put into the system into a batch. Now, here's the one that we just worked with. You can see here, Mary CFO, okay to pay. That's ours with the due date of next month and today's date for the invoice. But you can also see that I've got some other invoices sitting there waiting in my work queue, ready to be batched as well. Why is that? Well, what happens is, let's say I sent these in along the way over time, and as I was preparing for our conversation in our training session today, I said, all right, let me send in a bunch that are just going to be kind of sitting there ready and waiting. And I had some old ones I needed to clean up and get out of my queue. So I have them all sitting here. Let's say that I then want to take all of these, put them into one batch. Let's add that guy and put those all into one GP batch, just as you would most commonly do today, right? You look at all of your invoices, you say, yep, these go in this weekly batch, next weekly batch, whatever. So we're going to go ahead and create a new batch for these. And our options for creating a batch, much like they are for you today, if you're a GP user, is, leave it blank and let GP figure it out and default. Pick one from an open batch, or of course, go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to just create one with today's date, and we'll call it weekly. And we're going to put all of these invoices into this batch. Okay. We're going to create that batch. You're going to see all of these transactions disappear out of my work queue, and it's going to put them into that batch that we just created. Now, if it finds any warnings or issues or whatever. We'll deal with those later. And it's going to tell us what we need to do to fix them. Maybe something didn't map correctly or whatnot. But now those transactions came in straight to GP. We're going to just scroll down here to that batch that we just created. And we're going to get that invoice that we put through for approval from Advanced Office Systems for those tablet cases. I should have put in a couple more zeros so I wouldn't have to scroll so much. Yeah. So once we find this batch, whoops, did I pass it? Forgive me, folks. I'm scrolling pretty fast here. Oh, we need to go down to 9. Give me 1 second. There we are. So here's our weekly batch that we just created. And here's that Advanced Office Systems invoice that we just put through. We indexed as the AP person, right? We routed it to Mary CFO for approval. And once it was finally approved, it came straight in to this batch, to this payables transaction entry in GP. Now you can see here's the document number that we put in. Here's Optimus in the description. We know, yes, that's the one we were working with. And check this out. We go to the GL distributions right here inside of GP, and we see that they're there for us as well. And as the icing on the cake from a document management standpoint, we go back to additional where QuickTag lives and click View Documents. And we're going to see that PDF that we started with in the AP view and that we did a little bit of indexing with the template and that was routed for approval to our CFO. So end to end, the story is that the invoices are already digital now because our vendor sent them to us. They're simply indexed either in Essential or a dedicated work queue with QuickTag connected to GP, routed for approval, and then created right here inside of GP with all of the data for you. Okay, so we'll save that transaction. All those other transactions obviously got created as well. We're not going to look at all of them, but you get the idea. You could then go back and all of them have the documents associated as well as the transaction creation and the GL distributions done for them. But now let's just take another look at what that could be from a document management standpoint. Let's say for a moment that we needed to add some additional information to this particular transaction. Let me just find one here that I've done recently, and we can use it as an example. So let's use this guy. So here's a transaction that we, oh, lo and behold, had tablet cases. How about that? And we have some additional information that we need to add, okay? Maybe after the fact, right? Somebody sent us a packing slip. Somebody sent us a change order. Somebody sent us an email. Let's say that, right? Somebody sent us an email that we need to associate with this transaction. Well, watch how easy this is. Let's just come back over to our email for a second. Bring that payable transaction up. I want you to see both of these experiences. I'm just going to move these windows for you. So I go back to additional. Here's where the document management aspect of QuickTag really comes to life and lets you move things around very easily and associate them with transactions. We're going to say that we needed that email approval to be part of this transaction because our auditors are going to look for it, right? Or we want to have it for additional records just in case. And what happens if that person deletes the email? They no longer have it. That's okay. We're going to grab that email. We're going to pull it right over to this barcode, and we're going to associate that email along with the attachment as well as the body of the message right there to that transaction and say, okay, it says, do you want to use this file, associate this file with this transaction? I say yes. So the beauty of that is now if your GP users come back to this transaction, they of course can see the additional documents and the supporting information that you've added, but also your non-GP users. Say somebody calls over to someone in another department in the company and says, hey, do you have access to that approval for the invoice because we need to order some more or whatever? That person can simply log in to QuickTag and find that original document, all the transaction data, and any additional supporting information like the email that we just added to it. And they don't have to be a GP user, okay? All they need is a QuickTag license for that. So we really make that document management story end to end and then easy to work with. So let's hop over to our Mary AP role and see what that looks like then. And in this case, I'm a GP user because this is my Mary AP person, but again, if I wasn't, let's say I was in HR or sales or marketing, you know, that'd be fun. And I wanted to look this up. Here's the document. It lives in QuickTag. Here's the workflow history that we just went through, right? Mary AP person entered the initial indexing information. Mary CFO approved it. She said it was okay to pay. and Mary, the AP person, then entered it into the ERP system. But again, if I needed access to that email, here it is. I just come over here, I click to download, and it's going to open up the email in its native Outlook form, as well as give me the ability to see the attachment. So that's really kind of cool. When you think about the extensive nature of the document management, we added this in GP, right? But now it's visible here for me in QuickTag, and I don't have to be a GP user to be able to access it here. It's going to live in my payables transaction entry. Another word about the document management access here is when you think about the connectivity to GP, we have a connection. I'm just going to expand on the left-hand side, all of these drawers. We have a connection inside of GP using QuickTag to 79 different drawers out of the box. 80 different drawers in NAV, 33 in SL, 72 in AX. We're very deeply integrated from a document management standpoint into these ERP systems, okay? And what's great about that then is your finance team that associates all these documents, or some other user, maybe your HR, maybe your legal, maybe your contracts team, adds documents to the ERP system using QuickTag, but then again, everybody else has access to them. And they're very nicely organized here. They map directly to the naming convention of those forms, those screens, those modules inside of your ERP system. So it's easy for people to train and get up to speed. Now, beyond that, in my document management system, let's set our ERP system, let's set Dynamics aside for a moment. Let's say I need to add a whole nother section, another department that is not a user of my ERP system, and I need to give them access to a document management system. Well, I can do that here too. I can just create another, what we call site. If you look here on the left-hand side of the screen, I can create another site, let's call it legal, and create a couple of drawers for them, complaints, contracts, action items, whatever. And I can have those documents. These don't even need to be connected to my ERP system. I'm really giving everybody a single, centralized, organized source to find, search, and share these documents. Because let's say then somebody calls and says, oh, I need that document over here. So I can pull it up, I can email it straight from QuickTag now or in the future. What's great about that is that, oh, this is a contract I see. I might want to review that at some future date and say, hey, in 6 months, give me a notification with this file and tell me that I need to review this document, maybe make some changes. Okay, I can do all of that right here in my document management system. So one-stop shop. Get the documents in, integrate with our ERP system, easy to find, search, and share whether we're ERP users or not. Okay, now we're going to switch gears a little bit to our expense management system. So we've talked about AP automation, we've talked a little bit about document management. Now we're going to switch over to expenses. So the first thing I'm going to show you here is what the experience is like to submit and create expense reports and have them routed for approval. But these expenses that we're going to reconcile are using our corporate card. What makes that kind of unique? Well, let me come back to my AP person for a second. And again, this AP person has access to everything. So she gets the credit card statement, right? Remember when I said that we used to go over to the copy machine, cover up the parts of the statement? No, I don't want Mary to see that. I want Danny to see this, whatever. Quick Expense takes care of that for you. So with our AP hat on, I can see what transactions, I'm just drilling into Amex Mary, she's the corporate card holder, what transactions Mary, department manager in this case, because she is the one that uses the card, has as missing transactions for this month. Well, we can see she has 3 missing transactions. So what does that look like for Mary, department manager? We come over to the Mary, department manager world, and just like with invoices being sent in via email, of course, we can email in receipts for our expense report. We can also capture those receipts with our mobile app. I've got a couple of slides to show you how that works when we finish through the live demonstration. Okay, so Mary, department manager, has sent in her receipts. Whether she sent them an email, mobile app, doesn't matter. They're going to be here visible for her in this work queue that she needs to do something with, incomplete receipts. Let's go back to the dashboard so you can see where I came to that from. Left-hand side represents the receipts that we have submitted. They represent our individual expenses, of course. Right-hand side are expense reports, what's pending submission, pending approval, etc. and then tasks down here, what I might need to review and approve as well. So let's come back into our receipts, and I see that I have 3. Lo and behold, I have an image of that receipt, and we will add the receipt data. Now remember, accounting, we saw that there were 3 missing transactions as well. Yes, I noticed there's a question there as well. We'll get to that in just a moment, please. When I come down now to enter the receipt data about this expense, check this out. This is very important. As soon as I click payment type and select Amex, that it's a corporate card, I get that list of those 3 transactions. Now I'm looking at the receipt. I see it's dinner, $55. So that's the one I select from my list of transactions. And check this out. It populated the date, the receipt amount, can't even change it, turns red right there, and the comments. That's the transaction description that came in from the transaction statement, the corporate credit card statement, yeah? And so now I'll just add the merchant if that's something that it's important for us to track. All I have to do now is tell the system what this was for, sales, and let's say it was a meal, and I'm done with that receipt line and can submit that receipt, that expense. Now, what's even better about that is, check this out. Let's hop back over to Mary AP person for a second and look what her world changes to. And we now see, oh, Mary Department Manager has 1 matched receipt and she's still missing 2. Well, let's say Mary Department Manager gets busy. She forgets she's got to do more expenses. And so she goes away to do something else and doesn't come back to it for another day or so. Well, Mary in AP is like, hey, I got to pay this bill, right? I can click this little hamburger menu, send missing receipts, and now Mary Department Manager is going to get email notification, hey, you still have 2 missing receipts. We got to pay the bill and need to get on this. So you have that, again, visibility, communication, and status updates for accounting, and then also for the individual user who is the corporate card holder. Okay, so let's come back over and do this addition of the receipt data for these other couple of receipts. And again, the first thing that we do is say this is a corporate card receipt. And look at this. Now our list only has 2 in it, of course, because we've done one of them already. So we select the $300 flight receipt. As we can see, that's what this is. The receipt date and amount and description, again, already there for us. And again, I can select American Airlines. Now, those are just stored in my Google settings. I entered American Airlines the first time maybe that I traveled and entered a receipt for American Airlines, but now it's in my browser history list. So you enter it once, and then assuming your browser settings do that, you can access that in the future. But at the line level here, these departments, expense types, etc., this is available for you as an option based on the way that the system is set up. Quick Expense knows what departments you need to map to and what expense types need to be presented to your users here. And that's because our services team works with you to configure this. And oh, by the way, this department, this expense type, we're going to see in a little bit, actually map to GL codes when this transaction gets sent into GP. So we're entering these receipts. We see now we just have 1 more. We'll go ahead and add the receipt data there. Picking American Express, of course, as our payment type, we see now we just have 1 more transaction. Everything is filled in except for our department and our expense type. We added the merchant because we wanted to, if that's a required field for your business. And then we submit that receipt. So now we're done, right? Our 3 receipts are pending submission. We can see that right here. And look at this. I did not even have to create an expense report. Quick Expense created the expense report for me, and I see now that they're pending submission. So what does this look like for Mary AP person? We're going to come over here and do a quick refresh and check that out. All 3 receipts, transactions are now matched, meaning they've got the receipt, they have all the data they need. This expense report is now ready to submit. Now, Mary Department Manager only has 1 more step to do. And that is just take a quick review. Did I get this right? Was that what I wanted it to be? Lyft, yeah, okay. I can drill down to the line item if I need to. Yeah, sales, travel, I did everything. Okay, good. I'm gonna go ahead now and send for approval. If I had not done the receipt data entry for those expenses, this send for approval would not even be an option for me, okay? Quick Expense knows it needs to wait for the transaction data to be added with the receipts to match up to all of the transactions that it got from the statement. So now that we've done that, we can send this expense report for approval. We didn't need to create it. Quick Expense did that for us, but we do need to submit it and have it routed for approval. So let's take a look now at Mary AP World. When we do another refresh, we now see that the status has changed from, it went from missing to matched to pending approval. So talk about visibility. Mary AP person doesn't need to leave her office, doesn't need to chase anybody, doesn't even need to send an email to find out when people are going to submit their expenses. Okay, just click a little refresh button there and she sees it all. Mary Department Manager, queue is all clean now, everything is good. She can get back to work, no more need to worry about her expenses. Now, a quick word about that. Had we been doing a reimbursable expense report, the system doesn't know when that's going to be ready. So then I would just simply click the create button and either default the dates and company and expense report name or change them if I wanted to and click submit. So for reimbursable, I do need to click with a date range to identify when the expenses that I'm submitting are supposed to be included in my expense report. Okay, but now we see that Mary Department Manager has a pending approval expense report and it's waiting for approver Mary CFO to review and approve. So let's come back to our Mary CFO world and she just clicks over, she was in her tasks, right, when we approved that invoice. Now we click over to our quick expense module and we see here that she has an expense report waiting to be reviewed and approved. So when she clicks that, she gets a nice clean view of the expense report, the codes, the layman's terms of the codes that are going to be having these expenses assigned to them, right? Sales, meals, travel, that kind of thing. We can drill down, look at the individual line items, even look at the receipt image if we want to, which is pretty cool. If you want to double check, make sure your people are submitting the right images, not putting something funky in there like pictures of their dog. And, and then we can either approve or reject from here. But again, you may have noticed we got an email notification. We got an email notification that says workflow review and approval is required. Of what? Well, we have an expense owner, Mary Department Manager, for an expense report, $365. It's an Amex, so we know it's a corporate card. And then we just get all of this data presented in a very nice clean view here for sales, meals, sales, travel. And again, remember, sales, meals, sales, travel, that's for the layman's term, the end user view and making it easy to understand. But on the back end, when we push this to GP, it's going to push and create those GL codes. I can even open the file if I want to take a full look at the HTML expense report, even again, drill down and look at those receipts there as well. So I could approve again from email, or I could approve right here in our quick expense system. Again, if I reject, of course, I have to put comments. We're going to go ahead and approve right here inside of the system. Comments, again, are optional. We'll leave it blank this time. And now it's done. And then we're going to, as you probably are guessing already, we're going to go to GP and see how that transaction comes to life and be created. But let's do one more refresh. Look for Mary AP Manager. She now sees everything's approved. And that's her indication to say, hey, I can now go process all of my payments in GP, create my batch, take care of my expense report, payments to my vendors inside of GP. And there was that final notification back to Mary Department Manager saying, hey, your expense report's been approved. So every step of the way, there's visibility, there's notification so that everybody understands what's going on here, yeah? So let's take a look at that final step. We'll just save this transaction here and come back to a clean PTE inside of GP. We'll come back to our work queue. And of course, we're now going to have an approved expense report. And check this out. I hover over this list. I get GL codes. And as you saw, nowhere did we enter GL codes. This is, again, the extensive integration with GP for quick expense. So we're just going to create this into its own batch. Now, before we grabbed a bunch of them, this time we're just going to grab this one because we've kind of cleaned up our old invoices. So we'll go ahead and create this into one of my quick expense batches right here. This, we'll put it in the KEMEM M&M one. And we will then find this transaction that disappears out of our work queue. And when we come to find it as the voucher number here inside of GP, it's going to be right here closer to the top of our list. We won't have to scroll quite as much to get to this one. And there it is. So we'll select that guy individually. And here is our expense report created as now an invoice to American Express. And it also shows those GL codes, breaks it down there for everything that we coded on the front end as layman's terms, again, sales, meals, travel, whatever. And of course, when I come additional view documents, I can then see the nice clean HTML file. I can do the drill down. I can see the images, and it's all stored with a link to that transaction in GP, but it's stored and lives inside of QuickTag. Okay, so that's the extensive nature of, yes, you can get documents into the system. Yes, you can manage them, search, find, store, share, all of those documents across your entire organization, and all linked to, again, 79 screens in GP, 80 in NAV, 33 in SL, 72 in AX, soon to come D365 as well. So all of that is great. And then when you add the value of an AP automation workflow solution, an expense management workflow solution, all of those extend the value of your document management system, because now you're not just storing and managing documents. While that's great, it's an awesome first step. It really lets you leverage that same system across all the areas of your organization. Okay. So we're now going to then just hop back over to a couple of more slides to recap this, and I'm going to highlight for you the mobile app as well. So let me just share this other screen again here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So had we, I showed you having already sent in those expenses from an email. If I were capturing it on a mobile app, the Quick Expense mobile app is available for Android and iOS. You go down, and of course you have to have a Quick Expense license and connectivity set up and all that. But once you have that, you log into Quick Expense. You see initially it comes up with no receipts. You can either take a picture right there if it's, you know, on your desk, on the table. What I do is we're at a restaurant, maybe finishing up a meal or a meeting, and I take a picture right there on the table at the restaurant, so I don't even have to think about the receipt, and then I send it in to Quick Expense, put a little bit of data there, and I'm off to the races. I could, though, also take a picture there just with my regular camera. Maybe I'm in a hurry, I've got to catch a train or a plane or whatever. So I just take a picture with my camera and I go, okay, I'll enter the data, you know, when I get in the cab or on the plane or whatever. And so I can also access my phone gallery to upload that picture and then enter the data at a later time and send it into Quick Expense. Either way, it's very simple to now capture the expense receipts in the mobile app, again, available for Android and iOS. And you saw the integration with GP comes to life very nicely, end-to-end, capture, create the expense report, submit route for approval, have the transaction created inside of GP. If you're using SL, NAV, AX, F&O, BC, any of those systems, you can still use Quick Expense. We have a standalone version, works with the mobile app just the same way, but you would then work with your Optimus team to have that integration created with an export import, as many systems do for other ERPs as well. Now, one thing that we didn't have time to look at for in the AP automation solution is that we also support three-way PO match from a PO standpoint, and then receiving standpoint, and then creation of the purchase invoice entry inside of GP as well. Here's a quick snapshot of that. We'll have to set up a follow-up demo if you'd like to see that in greater detail or have questions about that. I want to be conscious of everybody's time here and then still allow a little bit of time for questions. But when you put all of that together, you really get the power of an organization-wide document management system. You're saving your employees time. They can capture and submit receipts from their phone. They can have vendors email in their invoices, make everything digital from the beginning. We really, really encourage you to think about make the document digital as soon as possible. And if you can get your vendors to help do it, it's going to save them some time and some postage as well. So there's something in it for them too. Then everything gets automatically routed, invoices, expense reports. All of that decreases your processing costs and saves time because heaven forbid it sits on somebody's desk, gets lost, gets delayed. Now you have to go back and ask for it again. So everybody wins. The payables transactions are created automatically in GP and SL. We handle it a little bit differently in NAV and AX, but we still have the workflow with that as well, and all of the document management and audit trail and everything. So again, if you're looking for something specific and would like a more detailed demo, happy to have that conversation with you. But this really provides visibility, eliminates the bottlenecks, and if you're using expense management corporate cards, it enables you to instantly reconcile those. So we again encourage you to think about QuickTag as that one system, this, in the middle of the slide, right? The core system that manages all of your documents across all of your departments, not just AP and finance, et cetera, HR, legal, sales orders, vendors, all of that kind of thing. So one system that can easily scale across your entire organization. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with QuickTag, we've been around for about 22 years. We were founded in 1997. We're a Microsoft Gold Development Partner, which means that we're very committed and connected to the Microsoft ecosystem. And as a result, we were the first to integrate with those systems in the way that I just described to you and showed you for GP specifically. And in our 22 years, we now have more than 120,000 business users around the globe. And we literally can automate any process. If there's a document in your business or a manual process in your business that you want to make digital and that you want to automate, chances are we've either done it before or we were happy to scope it with you to find the right solution for you. And we're located, all of our customer support and company is 100% in the US, and we're in Phoenix, Arizona, where most of the year it's very nice. I encourage you to come visit when you have an opportunity. A couple weeks, it's going to be perfect weather here. Right now, we're kind of getting rid of a little bit of the hot, but it's going to be really nice here in a couple weeks. Also encourage you to come visit us at Summit. We'll be at booth 701, and if you're there with your Optimus rep, certainly come by the booth. We'd love to have a chat and can learn more about your needs and your processes there as well. You can also find more information on our website or on this specific page that we have for Optimus, or you can call us or email us here at these phone number and contact.